getting children's basic needs met so they can learn. This fight has sharpened to two competing visions for East Phillips, one based on economics and caretaking, and the other based on pure make-believe. The richest city in Minnesota has chosen the latter. Across Minneapolis, Indigenous, Latinx, Black, LGBTQ, migrants, and poor people have borne the brunt of the systemic violence and the colonial state's response to the sovereignty of Indigenous nations. Roof Depot can be a healing center, reconnecting Indigenous people to the land to help reverse the psychological and spiritual effects of ongoing genocide. It can be a center where all residents of East Phillips have access to healthy food, good jobs, cultural spaces, clean energy, and more. It can bring greater levels of self-determination, as well as life-sustaining income and wealth generation. So what matters more to Minneapolis? Over the past week, we saw the mayor, the police, the city council, some of them, and the Star Tribune double down on opposing us. We saw over 100 police officers and 50 squads that shut down an 8-block radius on Tuesday night to evict a prayerful and peaceful Indigenous occupation of the Roof Depot site. You would think there was a major threat going on. At one point, I saw 40 officers surround 2 Indigenous women. Maybe some of you were there too. We saw the Star Tribune put forth an editorial that looks like it was written by the city. Our response is in the works. We hope they publish it. We have seen greater accusations that we are putting forth a misinformation campaign. And let me be clear of what there can be no dispute about. There is arsenic beneath the soil of that Roof Depot. We have not been given enough information to know that the city will keep us safe. True, we don't trust the city. Maybe they are going to keep us safe, but we don't know. And so far, they haven't done a very good job of protecting us. We know by the city's own account that their proposed plan will bring more toxic air pollution, and we know already from the city's own information that this community has more toxic air pollution than almost any other place in the city. We know from the city itself that this community is part of a priority list for the city called the Green Zones. Again, not in dispute. We know from the city that they have declared racism a public health emergency and have committed to reducing racial disparities. Not in dispute. Where's the misinformation? I'm not sure yet. And we know that this will increase the racial disparities. Karen Clark, who's following me, has been saying for years this is a public health issue, and it continues to be that. All right, I'm coming back now to Joe's comments. I just digressed because I'm so pissed off about those comments. Anyway, here we go. Back to Joe. Thank you. But we also saw support swell for our community. The more that people understand our vision for being in right relationship with the earth and right relationship with each other, the more people support it. That this is a model for how to reduce disparities in health, income, and more. It's a model to ensure all communities have breathable air, livable places, drinkable water. It's a model to make our entire city better. It's a model that can be replicated across the nation for how to create a just and sustainable future in the lines of what Kip referenced in that beautiful land acknowledgement statement. On Friday, the trial court ordered the city to pause demolition until the Court of Appeals hears our case. This gives us probably between 2 and 9 months of time to continue building our community, our movement, and our power. And we are going full steam ahead with all of those things. This is not a time to rest. This is a time to look into community care. Thank you very much. Community care, community aid, relationships with each other, cross-movement work, which is thank you so much for what you're doing here to promote that, all of us. Nazir, a role model of mine as well. So we're working. We're going to work. This is not a time to pause. We're working to ensure all our relatives have the basics of food and shelter where the city has failed them. We're aligning our base in support of our request for funding from the legislature, which Karen will be talking more about. We'll be keeping the focus on our vision, not the dirty tactics the other side is employing. Our strength is in our people, our community, our care for each other, our relationships, our vision. Our work is the same as yours. We are part of the same movement. We appreciate your support. This is a fight we can win. This is a fight we will win. Thank you. So next up, I just want to introduce someone who I've been following for a while. I'm so grateful to follow her. Karen Clark, she's a former representative in our state capital. She has been a longtime leader and longtime protector of the East Phillips community, including enormous work that she put into something that we call Karen's Law, but is known more formally as the Clark-Berglund Law, which basically prevents any additional pollution from going in that neighborhood without a cumulative impacts assessment happening. Does the city think that's something they should do? Apparently not. But anyway, she's the one that wrote it. Please warmly welcome Karen Clark.
Oh, thank you, everybody, and thank you for being here and being part of creating this movement. Oh, it's been a long time since I've been with MFT 59. I was in the legislature for almost 4 decades, and the alliances I feel with you and the work you're doing is very deep. So I just thank you. And I think we're here today, and I'm specifically here today to ask you to help us take some action. And Delaney did a very good job, and Joe's words did a very good job of kind of laying out what we're talking about, which is environmental injustice. If there's no other words that we can carry around with us today, please have it be environmental justice and environmental injustice. The city's environmental injustice on our neighborhood, which I have lived in for more than 40 years myself, is killing people. It's damaging our children. You know, asthma is higher in East Phillips than I think anywhere else in the city. The north side probably comes close too. And why? Because of all of the traffic, mobile sources they call it. Traffic is the #1 source of asthma. And my understanding is the #1 source of why our children miss school in the large numbers that they do. We just have to stop it. And the city is talking a little bit about arsenic and trying to give us numbers that we just really question. Don't let that be the only discussion. What's happening to the air is really important, and we're surrounded by state, county, and interstate highways that dump the kind of toxic pollution that causes us to be very sick. I'm going to just be very brief and tell you, ask you if you would please do this assignment. Give yourselves this assignment. We have bills in the legislature right now that are in the House and in the Senate, and it's going to start in the House. Our representative for our area in East Phillips is Representative Hodan Hassan, who some of you may know, and our senator is Senator Vitale. Right now, we texted a couple days ago with Representative Hassan, and there's going to be a hearing, I believe, on her bill, our bill, that would do 2 things. It would put funding into East Phillips Neighborhood Institute to allow us to deal with the fact that this land needs to come back to us. It would actually help buy the land back from the cities, and that's where they put us. $100 million, maybe 150, not sure what it's going to take to get it back and to stop some of the other pollution efforts. The second part of the bill is to stop demolition. And we believe, whether or not the legislature gets to this before the city tries to demolish the warehouse, that gives us a chance to really do the kinds of assets that has been talked about, farming and food and jobs and all those things. This bill will give us leverage, and you will help give us leverage with the city. The city will know when they see their legislators, who they need to vote for bonding and other things that the city needs, saying, oh, wait a minute, we want to deal with this issue of environmental injustice in East Phillips too, or even first. So if you can help us, I'm going to give you a couple bill numbers. The House file is House File 2093. Representative Hassan deserves support and thanks and urgency to help get this heard. The Senate file is Senate File 1853. Senator Vitale deserves a call to thank him for taking this bill and to please get it going through. So I'm going to end with that call to action, assignments, maybe is the way you like to talk about it as teachers. So just please help us with this. I can tell you as a former legislator, if I got 5 calls from a group of people, I would know that probably represented 500. And if it came from a meeting like this, they'd say, what in the heck were they doing? Well, how did they get all organized last night? So please, as many of you as can, please use your power to help us pass this legislation. It will give us the leverage we need to win this fight. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Wonderful. So next we have Robin Wansley, Ward 2, Minneapolis City Council member.
So I do want to make a quick arrangement and give preference to the council member who represents Ward 9 first, Councilmember Chavez. And if folks are fine with that, I can go after him.
Yeah, that's you can come to the podium, but if you're more comfortable.
I feel good here.
Okay.
Y'all
And
feel
just
good
one,
right here?
just one quick thing is, we don't have mics, unfortunately, so projection is key.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Jason Chavez. Pronouns are he, him, his, and I have the honor and privilege of representing the 9th Ward on the Minneapolis City Council. For those of you that don't know, I was born and raised in East Phillips, so this story is actually very personal to me and my family. And growing up, we were also victims of the soil contamination in our own backyard. So I'll share a little story that I share quite often. But growing up, my family and I used to grow vegetables and fruits in our own backyard. And we did that because as a child of immigrants, you know that if you plant and grow your own food, you can save a lot of money that can help then pay for your house, pay for your groceries, pay for everything else that you need besides the fruits and vegetables. We found out from the city of Minneapolis that the soil we were eating from was contaminated. And this isn't just my story, it's the story of East Phillips and Phillips in general, where people have been eating contaminated soil. So you know what that does when you eat contaminated soil? It poisons your body, it hurts your body, and leads to long-term health implications that you may not know until 20 years down the road. So the reason why I have been working with EPNI isn't just because I care for this community, but it's because I care for my family and have personally experienced that pain. So I've done everything in my power throughout this whole past year, from working with the mayor, from working for the city council, to working with my community members to figure out what the best possible outcome for this community is. And especially this week, I don't know if you'll know what happened at Little Earth, behind Little Earth. At the Roof Depot site, we had a lot of my native relatives show up in the occupied space in prayer and healing, and then you had more than 50 police officers show up and arrest almost, I would say, 6 people. People from Little Earth. And I can't just sit back there and say that that's okay. That it's okay to show up to my community, my people, and that I'm gonna sit there and let that happen. So I started working with some of my colleagues here, and we forced a vote on the city council the following day, I would say, 2 days later. And that was our last 2 legislative tools that we had as a body to use to force that. And the reason we did that is because of that week. I don't want to see my community be arrested. I don't want to see my community in tears, and I don't want to see them in pain. And I think you all are here because you don't want to see that either. So those 2 things we did. First 2 things were making a motion to the agenda, which we were successful on. We got 7-6 vote to add 2 things. The first one was to add to the agenda to end the contract with Rachel Contracting. If you don't know what rate control contracting is, that's the contract we have with the city that has allowed for the demolition to happen. And two, completely getting rid of the project. The first action, we lost 6-6, so it was a vote of 6 ayes, 6 noes. We came short and weren't able to stop the demolition. And then the second vote was also 6-6 to stop the project. That's important information to know because that's where we are at the city level, at the city council level, and why I'm just asking you all to just, whatever you do, just make sure that you're doing it because you care about this community. You care about our little earth and East Phillips residents. East Phillips residents are more than 70% people of color. It is the most racially diverse ward in the entire city of Minneapolis. There's folks that speak Somali, English, and a variety of different languages. There are multiple tribes at Little Earth. And seeing my relatives show up to the council meeting asking for change, asking for support, you can see the type of help my community needs. So I've been on this issue in very different variances this whole year because the goal from my perspective has always been to reduce the amount of harm coming into this ward and get the best possible outcome for my community. And after the occupation and the community I represent being arrested, there is no other answer besides stopping this. So,
right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Next we have Robin.
I want to see folks. So I came to the East Phillips fight back in 2021 as a candidate. After, by that time, 6 years of community members fighting for their own vision, an indoor farms vision, where the community that has endured decades of environmental racism and concentrated pollution, after decades of that, of decades of the city not taking proper action to support them, they said, we're not going to wait for you for the solution. We're going to create the solution. And that solution was the indoor farms, where it's a vision where Black and brown and indigenous relatives in this most diverse neighborhood in the city of Minneapolis would create their own renewable energy, would produce their own food, will live in a cooperative way instead of centering profits at the core of their community, of their gathering with one another. And in response to that beautiful multiracial solidarity, led vision, the city said, nah, we're cool with that. We think we want to poison you instead. We think we're going to take that building instead. We think we're going to take the land in which we stole from indigenous relatives years and years and years ago. We're going to do that instead. And you're going to have to deal with those consequences. And the community said, nah, you got it messed up.
Yeah.
And for 8 years, they have been at the front line. Sometimes when it was just 5 of them, sometimes when it was just 2 of them. And because of their resilience and dedication, they've been able to build the broad movement that we get to celebrate and stand with today.
Yes.
And, yes. And I want to highlight the fact that the reason why there is support is because we know the vision that they're fighting for goes much broader than just East Phillips. We know it's a vision that will have deep reverberations for all of our communities around the city, around the country. Because it says at the end of the day, all of our lives matter. The ability to have access to clean air matters. The ability to have access to air that's not polluted and that causes cancer, that causes asthma for our youngest children matters. It gets at the core that everyone deserves housing and not have to live in buildings that's filled with lead. That matters. That is a shared fight that all of us believe in because we know that has deep impacts for our everyday lives.
That's right. Yes.
So because of that, it's through that broader connection of this movement that you have pressured those at the city that I get to wear the badge of now, unfortunately. And to say, well, because we matter, we need you as the institution that represents our interests. to create policies that protect our lives. And from that, as people have highlighted, that's where we got the creation of the green zones. That's where we got the creation of the climate action plan, that the city itself has said, yes, we want to commit to a future where we are a 21st century climate resilient city in this world that honors the environmental pollution, the history of that we've imposed on Black and brown and indigenous people. It's through your work that the city itself adopted those policies. And yet, in this moment, we contradict that. East Phillips is the inherent contradiction and hypocrisy of the own positions that the city has taken to support our most vulnerable communities that we have cemented decades of violence upon.
Right.
And nevertheless, I want us to know that victory is ours on the basis of, this is again, it's not East Phillips alone. We are backed by a local, a national, and global multiracial movement.
Yes.
It's a movement that we see fighting right now in Atlanta.
Right.
Where same as we deployed, now let me say city leaders deployed hundreds of police officers in the beginning of a snowstorm. One of the most dangerous historic snowfalls we've ever experienced in the city. The city just deployed hundreds of staff and MPD to surround our indigenous neighbor. Looks a lot like the thousands of hours that police officers are putting in right now to surround protesters and defenders in Cop City right now. That yielded the murder, and I mean the assassination of Manuel Tehran. It's a movement where we're seeing it's connected to labor in light of the events in Ohio, where railroad workers literally just organized and said, yo, maybe, the corporate players that own our railroad system don't have our interest and actually profit when we destroy the environment. They warned us about it, and we see it right now playing out in Ohio. And it's playing out once again here in Minneapolis. So I want to know the victory is already won, because there are thousands, way more thousands of us that are organizing for that shared future. And best believe, as we're organizing, there's going to be opposition. Both have touched on that a bit. And because our movement is so strong, and the moral path that we're taking is inherently legitimate and it's right, we should expect violent tantrums from the ruling class for many more days to come. And our task is not to legitimize their distractions, but to hold the line for what we're fighting for. And we must combat their narratives that is inherently racist, that's unjust and untrue, with the truth. The truth is that the people of East Phillips who are standing against the poisoning of their community, they are not in the wrong. But amassing billions while our schools, our public schools, continue to go unfunded, now that's violent. When we have unsheltered people out in the cold while corporate developers is building unaffordable housing and sitting on vacant units, that's not right. That's violence. Not the people of East Phillips. I want to name that as we face these events of opposition, and I want to name who our enemy is, because our movements are successful when we know what we're up against and who is the face of our enemy. The ruling class, the mayor, our misaligned council members, corporate media, MPD. They are going to attack us. They're going to try to discredit us. And we cannot give them the space to do so. We must stand every single time and say, no, our East Phillips community members matter. Native lives matter. Black lives matter. Our white relatives who will also be poisoned as the result of this demolition matter. And we do not care what you say. We are going to hold the line because our children deserve it. Without them, without this, without any of this fight, what future do we have if we believed in your lies? So I hope you all know that we have victory on our side.
Right.
It is on our side. Might not feel like it because you're seeing the press tour right now of the ruling class. But our folks are organized. We know what we are fighting for. We know what the ultimate cost of not fighting for it is. And it's because of that we get to sit in a room like this and actually create the baseline for a more just and equitable city that everyone deserves. And I look forward to standing with you, be it on the dais, be it on the street, wherever you are, wherever the people organize, that's where power is. And I will be there with you every step of the way. Go.
Thank you both so much. So next we have Greg is going to speak.
Thank you. So I just want to start by acknowledging Greta and Marcia and Katina for involving us here, for inviting me here to this House of Labor to have this discussion about what are the interconnections and what is our role in the labor movement in this moment. So just by way of background, so my name is Greg Namacher. I'm president of SEIU Local 26. And as a union, we represent about 8,000 rank and file members across the Twin Cities that do janitorial, security, airport passenger services work, the folks who hang off the sides of buildings, the window cleaners, those are all our members. About 85% are people of color, about 70% are immigrant. And we are very proud about the place that we hold in our community and trying to fight for justice. And we stand here today very much in solidarity with the neighborhoods where our members come from, which is in one part East Phillips, and their right to make the decisions about what happens to their own community. Let me just say a little bit about this question of interconnections that Councilmember Wansley was just speaking to as well. So 5 of our members died during the pandemic. We were there cleaning those buildings and protecting that property all throughout those moments when nobody knew what this thing even was, right? And our members were going in every day and getting sick. And part of our own thinking about this internally is that we saw that at that same time, the huge corporations that have their corporate headquarters here in the Twin Cities, and we actually have more Fortune 500 corporations in the Twin Cities per capita than almost any place in the country, right? So with these huge corporations, they actually were making more money than they had ever made before while our members were getting sick and dying. And, you know, it was just a moment when we really did a lot of reflection about who is it that really has the power to make the changes that our members need. Now, we technically sit at the table with contractors. In fact, in about 9 months, we will sit at the bargaining table with all 8,000 of the members and the contractors that are our direct employers. They're the folks who sign our paychecks. So we will sit at the bargaining table with them at the end of this year. But more and more we really believe that the actual benefits, the pay, the resources to actually be able to change our members' lives, to be able to help protect them in the future, to be able to address the needs in their communities, cannot come from the contractors. It comes from the big multinational corporations that are housed here, right? But it's difficult because we do not directly bargain with them, right? We have no direct legal relationship with them. And so part of our own thinking internally is we have started to realize that those same corporations are not only the ones that at the end of the day truly decide for our members, even though they are not across the table from us in bargaining. They are also the same ones that make decisions about how the taxes flow into our state and into our city in order to pay for education, right? They are the ones who have driven the political organizations in the last 30 years that have shrunk the taxes coming in to be able to support our schools. My son actually goes to Justice Page, had 64 kids in his classroom at the beginning of this season, at the beginning of this year, right? In his math class. He said, Dad, it was actually the most quiet class because it was in the library and they have carpet, so it was very quiet. But, you know, just this is not acceptable. And this is the result of many different decisions, but at a fundamental level, this is about the squeezing and the shrinking of the taxes that are able to go into our extremely important education system. That is driven as a political project by those corporations. At the same time, it's those corporations that really are the ones that, sometimes decades ago put the poisons into the soil that we are now trying to figure out how we get out of in the middle of with EPNI and East Phillips. It is those same corporations that today put a huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere through the heating and the lack of recycling coming out of many of those buildings that we clean and protect downtown, right? And that is the exact same set of corporations that have built and now defend the HERF solution to that problem, which is to burn a bunch of the trash rather than to figure out how to reduce waste and instead have recycling. So at the end of the day, we have really understood within Local 26 that these multinational corporations are the ones that are actually behind many of these different issues that tie us together. So if we are going to be effective in how we actually start to push back, we have to start with that analysis, we believe. One piece of it, and this is just a piece, is that we are now very excited to see that the expirations of many different contracts across the Twin Cities labor movement are coming to a head in winter of this upcoming year. So our MFT brothers and sisters are going to have their contracts, I believe, expire in the middle of this summer, and they'll be in bargaining into the fall and winter. Our contracts expire at the end of this year. Bus drivers, many other, we believe about 30,000 workers will have their contracts expiring at the same time. And that is an opportunity for us to ask this question of ourselves as a labor movement. What is our role as labor as these fights around environmental justice come to a head? What is our role as labor as these fights around affordable housing and rent control and rent stabilization come to a head in our city? What is our role as labor as we look to try and have the people who kept our economy open during the pandemic be able to actually come to the table and be a part of the well-being of our community as a whole? So those are the questions in front of us, and what do we need to do as a labor movement to step up to that moment? So I'm very excited about starting that conversation with all of you here, and obviously one of the first lines of this fight is going to be in Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next we have Marsha.
Hello, my name is Marsha Howard. I am an English teacher at Roosevelt High School. I've been there since 1998. I'm also the first vice president newly elected of MFT 59. And I'm also at George Floyd Square at 38th and Chicago and have been for over 1,000 days. On that corner. I thought about what I wanted to talk about, not only as a teacher, a member of the Eco-Justice Working Group, but also as a person that is in the middle of a fight for the 24 demands of Justice Resolution 001. And after hearing these powerful speakers so far, I thought about what I'm really good at, and that's this, inoculating. And what I need to do for all of you who are of the right heart, of the right mind, who are ready to join us in this fight, who are already involved in this fight, I need to warn you about some stuff, just based on my own experiences since May 25, 2020. I need to warn you about the fact that they knew, and when I say they, I mean the powers that be. I ain't gotta name names. I don't have to name names of people whose houses I've been in, and you know who I'm talking about, whose babies I've had on my lap, right? Who I've gotten ice water from their kitchen as we've negotiated these demands over the last 3 years. And these are the same people who have called me while I'm standing in the middle of the street and said, they calling you a terrorist. You're gonna call me and tell me this January 5th, 2021. January 6th, I said, you were saying? I need to warn you that when you're in this fight, the mood is about to change, and they're going to use words like terrorists to aunties, to relatives, to our elders, to people who are parents and grandparents that are standing at a defunct roof depot just saying, please stop poisoning my people. Stop poisoning us. Don't try it. Let us use this building. Oh, you were willing to let us use this building when you wanted to do trade for one of the 24 demands that had to do with housing. And then we took meetings. Yeah, I'm telling stories. We took meetings about, instead of that demand, we'll give you Roof Depot, we'll give East Phillips that depot. Okay, fine, because it's a negotiation. So you're willing to do that before an election, and then everybody was like, oh yay, they won. And then yoink, you took it right back. Right. You never intended for them to have that. No. They never intended. They never intended. Oh, but a birdie told somebody, oh, y'all had another, oh, you got the waterworks that you could have used. You could have used that. Oh, but y'all already know they got these condos popping up every 5 minutes, right? It'll make them some money over there. It'll make them some money over there. And then you start thinking about development. And then you see the way in which they treat even your space, 38 Chicago, which is a little nothing about nothing, right? But then I remember a 25-year-old first-year teacher buying a house, and I was determined to buy a house 3 miles from my school. I didn't know nothing about Minneapolis. I took a little map, I did a little circle, and I said I wanted to live by my students. I wanted to run into my students' parents at the grocery store. And so I bought a home on 38 and my block, right? Hold up. Here was the selling point. They showed me 38 in Chicago, and they said, here's a mock-up of what it's about to look like. It's an up-and-coming neighborhood. And it was like 1998, sort of like rough, and where a church was a grocery store on the bottom and a 4 or 5 level condo on top. Ooh, this gonna be nice. So I bought my 4-bedroom house on a double lot, a block from 38 in Chicago, for $69,900 because it was the hood, right? I couldn't even buy a stairwell on my block for that amount anymore. So when y'all talk about what's going on at 38 in Chicago, understand they had a goal that was 10 to 20 to 30 years in the future. And they working backwards, y'all. And when y'all look at the Roof Depot, they had a goal. And they don't want you messing with their money. God bless you. God bless you. But they don't want you messing with their money. They don't care about the arsenic. They don't care about the asthma. I care. I got kids who don't come to school because of asthma attacks. I've been teaching for 24 years. My brother-in-law, a grown-ass man, died of an asthma attack. Of asthma. And they're acting as if. I think the words were, no one's going to die from this project. One of my comrades, one of my relatives, Frank Yellow, from 38 Chicago, Indigenous brother, he would leave the fire and go and occupy the Roof Depot. I'm telling his business because he passed away, and so I can. And we would supply him with what he needed, and he would go and occupy. He says, all I want to do is make sure that my people have someplace safe and warm, what you need. So if y'all saw and you contributed to the propane tanks and the tents and the blankets, that was for that. And they kept doing it, even when the police kept coming up and rolling them and kicking them out. He says, this building is so big and they see that we are freezing. Why are they kicking us out? The plans for the Roof Depot, the aquaponics, the farming, the housing, the businesses, all of that makes sense, right? And so their opposition to it don't make no sense. But if it don't make sense, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. So this is what I want to warn you about. This is about to get what we call spicy. It's going to get spicy. If you bout that life, I need you to prepare. If you bout that life, you need to prepare. And what they're going to do is malign you in the press. They're going to tell the powers that be are going to tell the public, because they are in cahoots now with commercial media, and try to paint you as rabid, vociferous. I don't bad jacket anybody else, but I'm going to tell you this. Be careful too about folks. They need someone to act a straight ass fool in public in order to paint the entire movement and all of us. I need you to be careful. Do you understand? Now, if we were on the street corner, if we were by the fire, we could talk a little bit more free. But I need you to understand how this is working. So I need you to conduct yourself accordingly. Be like water. But you have to start acting. You have to let them know. If it's one of us, what'd she say, 5 to 500? So 1 to 100. Where there is people, there is power. And it's never just you. It's going to be you and everybody behind you. Everybody behind you. And you need to let your elected representatives know that I don't know what plans they got for re-election, but it ain't going to happen the way they think it's going to happen. Right. If they move the way that they move. 3 years, I kept people's name out of my mouth. Y'all know I keep a fucking body cam on. Y'all know I keep a body cam on. And I've kept people's name out of my mouth, but I'm telling you right now, on this one, we're going to be rolling tape. Y'all better stop playing with me. Stop playing with the people of the East Phillips neighborhood. All they are asking for is safety. All they are asking for is consideration. All they are asking for is a safe place for them to thrive. And who are we to deny them?